We are here today now to talk to the makers of Waving, a most incredible short. If you could introduce yourself and let us know what your roles were on the movie, please. And as close to the mic as possible, they're not great.
Evening, I'm Rolfin Nyhus. I'm the director, co-writer and producer of the film.
And I'm Catherine Benfield. I'm an OCD advocate, do a lot of work raising awareness about OCD, and I came on board as executive producer.
Well, thank you both for being here and for showing what, for me personally, was an absolute amazing movie. I'm going to dig straight in with a really heavy question. There's a lot of personification allegory going on. We got the unplugged telephone, the desk with no chair, the frames with no photographs in. He's in the centre of his universe in there. A weak, dim standard lamp in the corner. Where did this all come from?
Well, the genius behind it was our wonderful art department. So Adriana, Faria and Lisa, they've picked up a number of nominations for it. And the inspiration was kind of a big reference was Francis Bacon's work. So he had a knack for understanding the violence of rooms and basically using them as a setting for sort of people in existential crisis. So that was a big reference, but I'll let Catherine talk more about it, because what was important for us is that the visual aesthetic had a very strong surrealist leaning aesthetic without tipping into the absurd, so that we could visually take the audience on a journey inside the mind of someone with OCD. Obviously, famously, surrealism came out of the 30s in France. It was all inspired out of Freud's discovery that, we have this unconscious side of ourselves which drives a lot of our behaviour. And so, yes, that's the untold side of OCD. Maybe you should chip in here,
yes,
Catherine.
Could you add a little bit there, Catherine?
Yeah, absolutely. Mine won't be anywhere near as artistic an answer as Rolfin's. That's not my domain, but we knew how important it was to represent OCD in a way that it doesn't normally get represented. We've all seen the hand washing or the cleaning trope, and we've all seen very external actions and compulsions, and the surrealist element was really important to show that actually you can have OCD, it can be completely debilitating, but then really not show a lot of the symptoms outwardly. Ralph isn't doing very much in terms of outward OCD compulsions. You just see it in terms of his behaviour and how much it's kind of destroying him, really. So that surrealist element was so important. And as far as I know, it's the first time it's been done in a film about OCD, because normally you do have the flicking switches. So that kind of surrealist, real out there, lots of questions without answers. It was all about, that's what it's like to have OCD. That's what it's like, that uncertainty.
And isn't it like our other exec, Ethan? He's a international OCD advocate. And as he says, we triple down on the discomfort to explore the emotional side, because in media, in film, all you see is the Jack Nicholson's As Good As You Get, symmetry and all of this stuff, and you don't actually understand that it's a debilitating anxiety disorder. This is full of intrusive thoughts, horrible imagery, and this is a side of OCD that doesn't get discussed or seen in film, generally.
Thank you. So we've got lots of conspicuous and surreptitious allegorism and symbolism all over the place, absolutely all over the place. Did that come from you two as writers, or in combination with others as well? We got the obvious symbolism of his clothes are ragged, there's writing all over the wall, and I hope everybody picked up on it, but if you didn't, I'm sure it's fine. The wonderful little peppered Morse code in there with OCD in Morse code, which is really, really clever, and it's just full of it. The movie's full of this. Could you tell us where all of this come from? Was it a combination of the couple of you and Steve, or you, Steve, Catherine? Where did it all come from?
Well, a lot of that is just sort of standard film grammar, isn't it? Foreshadowing and all of that stuff. So Steve and I are big Lynchian fans, so there's a lot of like Easter egg planting going on. But a large a large number of those symbols come from Steve's life. So Steve's got OCD himself. So the circles that you see, for instance, he used to draw protection circles or walk protection circles around things because of this irrational fear that if he didn't do that, his mother or his brother or someone in his family was going to die if he didn't complete that compulsion. So it's sort of a combination of sort of biography on Steve's part, and then just good visual grammar, foreshadowing, reusing motifs in different ways. Yeah.
It's wonderful visual grammar, but may I ask, and this is, I mean, I've watched it a few times and I'm picking up things on the second and third occasion. But how do you reconcile this as a writer-director, that some people may be losing 90% of that stuff? Does that matter that they're not seeing it? Or is it important to you that they pick up on a lot of this stuff? I don't think it does. It's that, I mean, the work is in the craft, isn't it? So, it would have bothered me more if I'd suggested these ideas to the production designer and the art director, and then rather than them enthusiastically getting on with it, a look of incredulity came across their face, and they just laughed at me. So they love these ideas and they wanted to do them. But if you look at art, the references that we've got there, Francis Bacon, for example, obviously famously a sadomasochistic homosexual, you can look at his paintings and see two men wrestling and go, well, obviously this is a painting depicting like a homosexual act. But actually his whole philosophy and approach to life was embedding the will to power and Nietzsche. And actually, once you have that understanding, you go back to those paintings, and they don't look like anything that they ostensibly look like on the surface. So, I think, whether you get it all or not, it doesn't matter. It's just having that depth of thought that goes into it makes it engaging for you and for the people you're working with.
We wanted it to have layers as well, didn't we? I mean, there was a lot of discussion about, when he scrawls OCD on the wall, we were like, well, from a film point of view, that might almost look a little bit patronising, but then also we're making it to help other people. And although it's very helpful if you know that this is a film is about mental health and how difficult mental illness can be and how ugly and difficult it can be to get over, but then we also wanted to make it sure that for those people who are watching it who wouldn't pick up on those small little bits, I mean, this is my first film, I missed a lot of that myself, but you want it helping everyone on layers so that it's for the people who would understand those, or those people who pick it up on the second, third time of watching it, but then also the people who wouldn't notice it at all, but then it doesn't matter because they're seeing hope at the end of a film about mental illness, so it kind of, we wanted it to, be something that moved everyone really and appealed to everyone.
So just following on from what you said about on the wall there, he actually converted OCD into Our Cruel Demons, which was wonderful. And as soon as I saw that, I personally thought of relating to OCD, that the devil is in the detail, which almost could be another title for it. So on to the title of Waving, which obviously is heavily in the climax of the movie. He's waving as he's contemplating suicide. Is he waving goodbye, or is he waving in a desperate hope that someone's going to see him and save him?
Well, the title came from because Steve's anxiety gets so bad that sometimes the only thing that can cushion that is white noise or the sound of waves. But when he first suggested it, I thought of the Stevie Smith poem, Not Waving but Drowning. So it was very, as Catherine was saying, it's very important to us that that it had a note of hope at the end. What was the question? What was
the title?
And
I was talking about, was the waving a cry for help, or was it literally, I can't cope anymore, I'm going?
Well, I think the way we looked at it was that, especially for men, I think that we tend to struggle to ask for help. So, the waving, it's about acknowledging that darker side of yourself, I think. So, like Jung famously called it encountering and assimilating your shadow. So saying hello to that. But yeah, also, I mean, just on the very literal, in a very literal way, just being open to help from other people.
And He was open to hell, and not by his actions or who he was, but he was saved by grace. Now, that to me is a pretty obvious statement. Am I reading too much into it?
Nope.
No. And she was in the suicide awareness colours as well. They dressed her in the
Yes,
suicide
the
awareness
scarf.
colours. Yeah, yeah.
So he was saved by grace, as in Ephesians. Saved by grace. Wonderful. Ralph Ineson.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if he could relate in any way, and I don't want any disclosures in regard to that, but he seemed to find a great awareness and compassion in regard to somebody who is experiencing this to a great degree. How did you get him to do that and to probe deep into these emotions? You had some really close, big shots of him when he was suffering and watching the television, seeing his daughter, seeing his wife, seeing the presenter. Could you tell me how you got that out of him? How did you get him to go so deep? I know he's a highly experienced actor, but could you tell us how that worked?
I was really worried. I mean, with mental health, like such a slippery topic that fools rush in where angels fear to tread, I think. And it's, as Catherine can attest, it is so debilitating for people, and we didn't want to clumsily be playing around with it, and we were going to some quite dark places in the film. And so as Steve sent me the script, I did as much research as I possibly could have done for a short film. I mean, so many different as-ifs and action verbs and like any conceivable question that Ralph may have asked me. I mean, I was over-prepared when we sat down for the costume fitting. And I mean, without sort of disclosing too much, we had just, it's with certain people you can just be very direct and open, and there's just emotional honesty, and there's no judgment or anything. And within sort of 15 or 20 minutes of speaking with Ralph, like all of that homework went out the window, and Steve and I just knew that he could do it. And so it was just a case of. So that instant trust and rapport was there. I mean, because you can see how much he's throwing himself into it. Like, I mean, like we quickly established trust. That's all I can say. Okay. For him to, to go.
He got it though, didn't he? He really got it. I mean, he's been involved in my work in like OCD advocacy and stuff like that as well. Ever since the film, he always like retweets my stuff and stuff. So he follows what we're doing with the film. And considering how busy he is and how in demand he is, the fact that he still has time to do all those things with us and to help me spread awareness and stuff is incredible, really.
Yes. You used a very atypical, abrasive soundtrack, not an obvious soundtrack whatsoever. Could you explain how this come about? And was it highly intentional on your part, or did it come about from a lot of suggestions from the actual composer?
Again, Steve and I we're just huge Lynch fans, so we knew that we wanted a Lynchian soundscape, and it had to, where like Ralph says about 6 lines of dialogue, so the room had to be a character, the sound design had to be a character, so there was like a huge amount of 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, working with the sound designer, with different ideas to get us to that point. Our sound recordist Tom is like a Martin Hannett sort of character. Like, the minute there's any quiet on set, he's got the mic in a flipping air conditioning duct trying to get some ambient noise. So there's a lot of layers like that going on.
Yes. Wonderful. Okay, so I just have one question regarding the actual story. If you would, I'm not talking into the mic, but terrible. The phone rings. Now we know the phone's unplugged. The phone rings, and it rings 3, 4, 5 times. And pretty much every time it rings, he looks the opposite direction to where the phone is. Now, is this a part of the story which is saying the tiresome, bothersome, I want to get away from the repetition of what's going on, or do I not have the slightest idea? Could you tell me what that is, what that's representing? He's looking away from the phone all the time. It rings.
It's exactly that, what you said. And then just and this idea of just like stretching But obviously, in if it was diegetic sound, you'd respond to the phone a bit quicker than that. But the idea was that he's waking up in this space that he doesn't recognise. We're just trying to sort of uncompress time a little bit, just to sort of settle the audience into this world that we've placed him in.
And again, back to the allegory, the key coming out, it's like he's the only one that can actually solve this problem. No matter how many people around him are helping him, it's got to come from within. And even when he gets the key, there's a trepidation, an apprehension. When he opens the door, he can't even face the light of the good stuff that's outside. And even when he's outside the umbrella, it's just peppered, isn't it, with allegories?
OCD is so insidious, it takes over everything. And a lot of people, it takes on average 18 years to get a diagnosis. It's ridiculous. And so by the time people actually find out they have OCD, it's such a massive part of them that facing recovery is terrifying. Who am I? What's going to fill this gap once I enter into recovery? And I think that was shown brilliantly about, the key. You almost see an element of surprise. Where did that come from? What on earth do I do with it? And it is before he walks into the light. That's what everyone feels like when they're about to enter into recovery. It's like, I've had so many people, and I know Steve wouldn't mind me sharing this, where they kind of say, I don't know what I'd be without it. It takes a lot of guts to start taking that route to get help, So, and I think that was represented really well.
I think a lot of guys actually worry that their creativity is sort of bound up in their anger management problems or their OCD or whatever it is, And funnily enough, Grayson Perry was in the doc, and he speaks so fluently about his own experience with therapy, and if anything, it's just helped him get his tools organised and get his life in order. Like, it doesn't affect your creativity. This is a myth,
Do we have any audience questions? I don't know who's the roving mic.
It's me.
Roving mic, Spencer.
I'd just like to say, as a filmmaker, or I pretend to be a filmmaker, you look at films and you see flaws, and I'm sure in your own way you look at the film and you see flaws. From my perspective, I couldn't see anything wrong with that. That's an amazing film.
Thank you.
Aesthetically beautiful.
Yes, I agree. So congratulations for this gorgeous, thought-provoking movie. Absolutely very touching.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask a question about the visual representations of the mental illness, of the promotions. I was wondering how much of that is free interpretation or comes from interviews with people who have this and how they feel. I don't know if you're allowed to put that into the film or not, but I was just wondering to what level it's a visualization of discussions of what it feels like, or literally somebody telling you,
No, it's Steve.
Well, it's Steve. So, it's just trusting Steve verbatim, the writer and collaborating director, producer on Waving. So, the idea of the collaboration is sort of the newsreader, which is brilliant. Is that's how Steve sort of sees the authoritarian voice in his head, almost like this 1984 sort of thing. Whereas the spinning top. I was saying to Steve, well, look, what's it like? I've a lot of people in this room have experienced anxiety, depression from time to time, and trying to come up with a metonymy, an image that sort of symbolises the anxiety just sort of whipping out of control. So it was a collaboration. So different images, but basically Steve would always have the last say. So I'd be like, well, look, visually, cinematically, this makes sense to me, but if you don't feel it's appropriate, then we'll drop it, and him always having that final say. Sorry, go on.
No, you don't.
That's it. No, yeah.
We kind of had to alter a few little bits, like, the grounding activity where he was actually feeling the door and the wall and counting down. A lot of men do that, but we also know as well that a lot of men use violence to try and stop their thoughts. So we actually, we know that some men will actually go up to headbutt a wall properly to try and just stop it, just to kind of cause, just to... I don't think they're intending to really hurt themselves. I think they just want the thoughts to stop. But obviously we couldn't ask Ralph to do that. So, we had to just kind of leaning against the side, just stop and shouting at the thoughts and stuff. So it was based on Steve, but then we also had to kind of edit little bits as well that we knew from other people, or the things that just weren't fair to ask people to film really. But then he talks very openly about those kind of things that he's done.
He did actually run his hand down the wall.
But that's a ground. That's a compulsion as well.
Right,
You know, we very
right.
often talk about hand washing and stuff, but a compulsion is anything that's designed to lower anxiety. And so
Yes.
for him, it's a grounding activity,
Yeah,
and
it
it's a kind of
grounds him.
stop. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Another question.
Fantastic film, thank you for sharing it. Just quickly regarding the process of the casting, what was the process like to get him on board on the project? Did he get it? Did you have to convince him, or was he on board straight away?
Yeah, I hope there's a note of optimism here. I think we worked really hard on the script and putting a treatment together, and we sent it on the Friday lunchtime, and by the Monday, his agent said, yeah, he's read it and he's going to do it. That's it. And then, but it was at the beginning of COVID, right? So he's really in demand. Like, he had just finished Coen Brothers, I think, Hamlet. Like, he was in The Green Knight shortly before. So it was like, but are you prepared to wait for him? And so, like, we got the nod, but then we had to wait like 18 months for him to be available because it probably wouldn't have been that bad if it wasn't for COVID. But like, things were just getting moved. I don't know if you remember it. Like, just trying to do anything was just really, really painful. Worth the wait, yeah.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Do you have one more question? Oh, I'm not.
I've never seen him move so fast. Look at
I'm sat by the stairs, I apologise. Well done for getting an experimental film really into the festival. Because we've seen a lot of narratives, but I thought this was very experimental. So congratulations on that. I'm interested in, there are two directors credited, right?
Yes.
How did that work? Who directed what? Was it something that was down to the editor? How did you liaise with the fact that there were two thinking heads calling the shots?
We sort of agreed it'd be 70-80, 20-30 split. It's Steve's ideas, Steve's condition, doing the writing, and that was leave and final decision resting with him about sort of images that I might suggest that need to go in there because it's deeply personal to him. And then in terms of sort of managing the crew, the set, all of that logistical stuff, that was more on me. But I mean, the biggest part of the director's role really is just making sure that the performance is there. And this is why, I couldn't not do it without Steve. Do you see what I mean? Because he's got this store of knowledge, this wealth of knowledge, and knows exactly. Like, why would Ralph come and ask me about kind of like a motivation for something? It's like, we'll speak with this guy because he knows exactly what it's like. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah. Which makes me wonder, where is Steve?
He's in Birmingham at the minute. He couldn't make it tonight, unfortunately.
Lovely. Once again, congratulations on a fantastic exploration of the topic.
That'll put a big smile on his face. Thanks.
The imagery and, congrats.
Thank you very much.
So that leaves me with nothing else to say except congratulations on giving us a beautiful, amazing movie which spoke to this calamitous, woeful place that someone with OCD of such extreme nature is residing in every single day, this horrible, ruined place that is up here. Thank you so much. If we could give him a round of applause.
Thank you.